Thank you, Conchita. Thank you, Heidi. I hope I pronounced the name correct. Thank you for agreeing for this interview and giving us the opportunity to bring to light the workings of Mar on this occasion of World Environment Day. So, since we have so much to talk about in this limited time, we have curated certain questions based on which you have curated a full PowerPoint presentation, which is amazing, and we can't wait to go through it and have a look. So you can take it ahead.
Thank you.
Basically, when we talk about is there enough conversation about protecting the environment, I think there's been a lot of conversation, especially in the last 10 years, but there's never quite enough, right? We can always have more. Unfortunately, we try to push and push, but it's a slow process. When you're changing attitudes and you're changing laws and you're changing practices that have been there for a long time, it takes a long time. Basically, if we think about where Costa Rica was in the 70s, for example, on the buses, there used to be signs that would say, don't throw your trash in the bus, throw it out the window. And we've gone from that to being a very environmentally conscious community. So there's a lot of change that has happened. And even though it does take a long time. Obviously, it goes from going from a personal goal, knowing what each person can do, to a more macro goal with sustainable networks that work at a government level, at a community level, throughout the country. There's a lot left to be done. The main issue for us is where we work, which is in vulnerable communities, in the rural areas. And obviously these people are in the survival mode and trying to make ends meet economically. So the environment is not always in the first place in terms of their priorities. There are issues of basic waste management and other issues that need to be taken care of as well. How does ecotourism fit into this conversation? Ecotourism is the basis for this conversation, because if we're talking about nature-based tourism, where people realize that if they protect the environment, they're going to be able to get an economic return from tourism that does come for that purpose. About 60% of the tourism that comes into this country comes for the environment, to be immersed in the environment. And it's become a pioneer, Costa Rica, in this. If we even got a prize in 2021 for the reversal of the deforestation process that was going on in Costa Rica. And right now it's about 60% of the coverage has been reversed, and we now have 60% forest coverage again in Costa Rica. So if we look at, we also have 6.5% of the biodiversity of the planet there. So we have a number of things that are going for us, and about 26% is in protected areas. So there are a number of measures that have been taken at a national level, and about a fifth of the population is now engaged in tourism projects, which means that they're earning 2 to 3 times more than they would be if they were still connected with agriculture. So this is still a threat. Massive tourism is a threat, I think all over the world. In Costa Rica, the tourism board is very conscious about this, and they have found that about 94% of the hotels in Costa Rica are 40 rooms or less, which gives you an indication of the level of development, even though it is a threat. One of the problems that we have is obviously the use of plastics, which is a global problem. There is a lot of work being done in that direction in Costa Rica. We have a basin, a micro basin in the center of town of the Rio Torres, and They've made a biological corridor here and setting it as an example of what can be done to remove waste and plastic and all of those things that are filling our environment. Even though since November 2019, the sale and distribution of plastics has been banned, single-use plastics. And so this has been a great step in the right direction. The replacement of fossil fuels by the mass transit, electric, changing over to electric. This is a project that is in process. And making people more aware that they need to be the center of the solution. It's not just the government. The high cost of water and fuel has helped to reduce the waste. But even then, sometimes there's not enough talk about the environment. There is a problem of the use of pesticides that are killing fish and bees, and there's a raise of consciousness, but it's not enough among the general population. And there is resistance to large tourist complexes, especially in protected areas, and this has been successful, as well as the construction of dams. So there is a lot of movement in the sense of environmental protection.
Great. Thanks, Heidi. So one of the things that you wanted us to talk about was what has Mar done? In other words, what specifically has our organization done? And I can start by talking about efforts, even though they're small efforts. And I think that we have to recognize that everything that we do is at a very small scale. But we do think that there's a cumulative impact. We've done 6 events of reforestation, and as a result, we have planted 3,000 trees. This we usually do in collaboration with the community. And so the community organizes, we get the trees. They are provided free by the electric company. They give us seedlings about, the trees are about a couple of feet high. And then the community we organize them to plant the trees, usually along the route, along El Camino. So that has worked well. And now we were surprised that just actually this Saturday, it was a spontaneous, a community spontaneously decided to do reforestation using the methodology that we had taught them to do the year before. And so they knew how to order the trees from the electric company. They knew how to organize the event, how to publicize it. And that was really almost a scaling up of our efforts, which started spontaneously from one of the communities along the route. It bodes very well that we will be able to enhance that program in the future. We have also started working on installing water harvesting system. I mean, the rainwater is like an abundant resource in Costa Rica, and we don't really understand why we don't do that more. And what that also had a replicative effect. We installed it for Enebais, and then other people in the community copied the system that we had installed for their own purposes. And so we see a little bit of that again. We do something very small, but then it has a replicative effect, and we hope to do more and more of that. We have some programs in the works that we would like to implement. We don't yet have the resources to do so. But the idea is that the water harvesting systems become much more of a basic use of abundant natural resource. We collaborate with the biological corridors, and the route passes through what's called the Paso del Jaguares and the Barbilla National Park, where they do habitat studies with the jaguars, and we donated one of the collars. They're a bit expensive, and so they needed a little support on that, and so we did that, and we worked together. We worked together with the people from those corridors and support each other. And this was just a very small gesture to show our support. We have also installed solar panels in indigenous village and hope to do more of that. We have done 2 of those at this point. The other thing that we have done is that we provide capital seed money for school organic gardens. You know, not only are they good education for the children, but they actually help feed the families and help lower the cost of feeding the students in the school. And we will continue to do that in a much more systematic basis as we go. We've done, we did last December a very successful, it was a combination beautification project and raising awareness by painting these murals of Save the Ocean. And a lot of people participated in that. Muralists from the capital and muralists from the towns of Manuel Antonio and Quepos. And the other thing that happened is that we engaged with children. Some of them were street children, but they painted a mural. There was a mural that was painted by them under the guidance of a muralist. And then we gave them the paints so that they could continue doing that on their own. So we were very pleased with that project, and we hope to do more of that. We've actually also given capital seed money aimed at helping the indigenous women diversify the products of their produce in the forest. So they grow certain food staples in the forest, and they wanted to diversify that. So we gave them money to be able to do that, and we fixed the building so that they could sell their produce. And this is all the idea that they want to get to the point where their communities are sustainable, all inclusive, where they can, you know, all the produce, everything is being produced in the community itself. And we're working with them for them to be able to accomplish that. And then in another program, we basically gave capital seed money for women, depending on what their interests were. This is never anything that we impose on them. So some wanted to do chickens, others wanted to grow produce, others wanted to do eggs production. And so we've given them that money for them to be able to do that. Why? Because this is all helping them be able to be sustainable as communities, rather than driving, you know, the 17 kilometers to the major city and buying the produce there, which is not only extremely costly, but much less environmentally friendly. Elizabeth has been working with some colleagues from the University of Costa Rica. They just started a few months ago, and they have a lovely program of helping the school children identify the practices that they can institute in their community that would be better waste management and better resource management. One of them involves being able to collect the seeds that for their families and the school to develop the organic gardens. And they've had a great time doing it. They've had fun. You can see the children planting the gardens and enjoying themselves. And it's a very nicely structured program that we're doing in collaboration with the University of Costa Rica, led by Elizabeth. Elizabeth is our consultant in the field in the area of Limón, which is one of the poorest areas in Costa Rica, and where there is a lot of flooding due to the rains the rivers come down the mountains, and there's like almost yearly destruction of livelihoods in that area. And so we hope to be able to do more and more to do climate change mitigation also, but we haven't yet really started on that. Then she's also working with Earth University in developing organic gardens and produce in the indigenous village, in the indigenous village. And again, this is a bit more of how they can increase the volume, how they can diversify. Especially they used to produce cacao, and we're trying to recover actually some of the practices that they had previously in the forest. And it's a big effort to do so, but we are hoping that in collaboration with the consultants from Earth University, we will be able to make some progress in that. The last thing that we can point to that we as an organization are doing is we have a group of students from the University of Costa Rica, and they have proposed to do a research investigation of the practices in terms of waste management in one community, and then from there elaborate a manual that could be useful for all the other communities along El Camino de Costa Rica in terms of waste management and recycling. It's something we have been wanting to do. We've tried to go at this in many different ways, and we hope that this kind of education program will bring some results. So one of the things that happened in 2021, we had a study done by a young man who came and spent a long time along the Camino, and he had the question, is ecotourism actually bringing benefits to these communities along the Camino? And what impact is it actually having on the environment? And he divided into the three sections through which the trail runs. And in the first section, the Limón, which is a very poor and socially unstable area of the country, he found that it has had ecotourism has had largely a very positive impact in the regeneration of local forests because of the realization of the importance of this for attracting tourists. But he says that really the main credit goes to the rafting industry, which has been very active in that region, and that Mar has come in and is continuing upon that. But at this time, the volume of people that do the rafting is so much larger than the volume of people that are coming to do the hike, that they say that truly the credit for the impact of ecotourism on positive impact on the environment, really the credit goes to the rafting business, which I think it's absolutely true. In the central region, he sees much more of the impact of Mar and the presence of the hikers in terms of changing the attitudes and giving people hope that some of the land that had been used for cattle ranch farming and things of that sort that has been abandoned because some of the crops have not been as successful, that now turning them and using that land for ecotourism has really proved beneficial to the people, particularly in Pejibaye, in Pagayitas, and in parts of Orosi. And so that the environmentally friendly practices such as conserving flora and fauna and protecting the forest, reforesting previous cattle farms and building ecological lodges and behaving respectfully towards the environment, Mar has had an impact on that. And then in the Pacific region, there what we have is we have this very successful business of coffee, which has become world renowned in terms of its quality. Tarasu, in particular, has gotten a certification, but it's really quite damaging towards the environment. Basically, it deforests, and so there is not a tension, but there's always a trade-off there in terms of how valuable is ecotourism, where it partners with the coffee plantation and at the same time looks towards being able to be respectful and protective of the environment. So that's a complex issue that we're hoping to study more and more and help the communities figure out how not to be so dependent, because the communities where we go through, it's not the producers of coffee, but the workers in the field. So they're very dependent to picking coffee. And at the same time, there's been an erosion of the land where they live as a result of that very type of agriculture. So he made note that there was some possibility for the ecotourism industry as it grows through the hikers to really bring a better balance in that region. So basically, the study that was sponsored by the University of Glasgow, University of Barcelona, and Erasmus University basically says that they felt that the work of Mar does show that small-scale ecotourism projects can bring positive effects in terms of both rural development and ecosystem conservation. And he particularly noted that to have these ecotourism projects with some oversight by an NGO with the values that we have, that we're fully dedicated to the management of an ecotourism initiative, can largely contribute to the success of these ecotourism initiatives being beneficial to the environment.
Can you tell us about environment work your nonprofit is doing? We are managing to program in the Cimarrones community in volunteer from two prestigious University UCR, who provide us with their knowledge of vegetal garden, waste recovery, organic fertilizer, and community baking. And what are the best way the people to work authentic for cause? Seeing the example of other communities where the results are already like integral part. Women Association working with legally independent organized for women, but with the effort of the Mar Association in several communities along the Camino de Costa Rica route, help us to better channel resources in effort to the program work and sample of the indigenous community of Ciota and Siniquicha.
And let me add, Elizabeth actually has a whole process of getting donated bamboo that helps create these gardens, so she helps them actually make the beds, produce their organic fertilizers, and her dedication is enormous. And sometimes she has a product chain developed so that some women grow the plant and the other one gets the seeds and makes tea out of it and then is able to package and sell it. So there's some wonderful things that she has been doing with the women in that area. And the organic gardens. The organic gardens are really state of the art. They're small, but they're very well done. So the last question that you had wanted us to talk about was about how the environmental awareness has changed over the years. And I have this quote from Fernando Yorca Castro, who talks about the 80 years of environmental state policies and how well that has worked. And I think Heidi mentioned some of it in terms of the success with reforestation, and also the move towards renewable sources of energy. There is a whole process of increasing the percentage of territory that is under environmental protection over the years. And I think that Costa Rica, with those parameters, has done really quite well. Also along in the formal education on environmental protection has also, since 1987, been increasing. You can also see the media highlighting environmental problems. And there are several NGOs that are dedicated to specific things, protecting the corals, reducing the, Heidi, how do you say la pesca de rastro en inglés? The net fishing, how do you say that in English? There's a term for that. I forget at the moment.
It slips my mind as well, but it's when you're pulling a net and collecting everything that comes in the net.
So there's NGOs that are really working very hard to changing the laws in that area. The other thing that has changed over the past 3 years is the role of the SINAC. SINAC protects the area and is dedicated to the biological corridor. But before, they were like policemen, protecting it. And what they've done recently is that they've put resources to educating people and helping people appreciate them so that they become partners in protecting the areas. And that has been a wonderful thing to see, just exactly what needed to be done. And I have seen it, with my own eyes in the past 3 years, how SINAC has really put resources in terms of giving talks to children, bringing the children to the national parks and telling them about the jaguars and the biodiversity and the practices that needs to be done. So that move from being protectors, policemen, to protectors, educators has been a wonderful thing to see. And social media, you can see the other day there was something in the internet that went viral about McDonald's, things that had been thrown on the beach, and people were outraged by that, and that sort of thing that social media is really picking up more and more. And the other change have been is like, it used to be that the corporate polluters, it was as though it was the problem of the corporate polluters, and now it has shifted more from the corporate polluters to individuals. And so that shift, I think, has been very healthy. The other change that has happened in the past few years in Costa Rica has been more and more the focus on climate change. And Costa Rica has really done an extremely good job in terms of that. It is one of the countries that emits least carbon emitting. But at the same time, the agricultural sector was proving to be a problem, and there's a lot more focus on that. It's a balance that needs to be made, because definitely it depends on the agricultural sectors for GNP. But there's that awareness of that more and more. It's not a new thing, but it's more and more so. And as you know, Costa Rica has participated in the Kyoto, in the Paris, and the Doha. All of that they have been active participants, and as Heidi mentioned, it won an award in 2019 as Champions of the Earth Award. So it had, as a result of its participation in the Climate Change Forum, Costa Rica generated a national plan on climate change, and it consists of 6 pillars. As you can see, it's the broad base. It claims to have concrete actions that it will be implementing between 2022 and 2026. And we think the commitment is strong in terms of figuring out how to mitigate climate change. And what's the best way for people to authentically work for this cause? I think is the education, the awareness of the value, the appreciation that what they have in their territory is of great value, and to have pride in it. At the same time, I think that we need a little bit more of the government to reward the people who are engaging in those sorts of practice, so that they have the economic and social benefits of the commitments that they are showing. So I don't know whether Heidi, do you want to add anything else?
I think you've covered almost everything. I think the main thing is that once the communities realize that people do come here to see the environment, and they get really excited when they see a sloth and a monkey in a tree, they realize that they have such a valuable possession in their hands and that it's worth protecting it. And I think the education that Conchita mentions is the best way to go for that, because people understand. Once they see it happening, they understand it and they value it, and they start taking their pictures in their environment and showing it off to the world. So yes, I think it's very complete. You probably have some questions.
There's only one word: I'm amazed. Because there was so much, I don't even know where to start and where to end. It was literally very informative, and I'm so grateful for all the wonderful work that's happening. And while all of this, listening to all of this, I could recall that during the 60s and the 70s, there was an incident that the scientists captured that was a hole in the ozone layer. So that was like a shock to the whole world, and all the countries came together and they worked for it. Like, they diligently, genuinely worked for it, and now we don't hear about a hole in the ozone layer anymore. So this really tells me that if we want to fight for something, and if we really get very much determined for it, we can achieve it. And even though there is a problem of climate change, especially around all of the world happening, that is happening, given the war and all sorts of war, all sorts of practices, this is something that has been on the top list of all the governments and the agendas. So yeah, and I could also recall a fact that is not very much general, and it's very personal. It's personal to everyone. It's something that nature and environment, just like Heidi mentioned, it also affects mental health people. Just being around nature can give them an amazing feeling. So you are not only helping the nature, but then you're also helping people personally. So it's like two targets hit with one spot, one shot. So thank you so much. And if Elora has any questions or anything she'd like to share.
There is no scope of questions. You guys have made such a nice presentation, and you covered everything so in such minute details. I mean, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really good.
Thank you for the questions. They were really good. So they help us prepare. So we really appreciate that.